Good morning, everyone. We've got the attendees rolling into the session. We'll give a handful of seconds here as people start connecting in. But for those of you that have joined, good morning. My name is Frank Gistalti. I'm the Vice President of Intelligence at the Medical Alley Association. And I want to say a welcome to this Medical Alley virtual webinar. We'll just give another maybe 15 seconds. I can see the number going up at 75, 80. It's just climbing up nicely. We've got really a fantastic session today, so I'm excited for the discussion, to hear your questions, and to get your feedback. All right, there we go. It looks like the number is stabilized, so I think we're gonna get started. Again, for those of you who have just joined, my name is Frank Ciscalti. I'm your Vice President of Intelligence in the Medical Alley Association, and thank you for joining us in this webinar this morning on virtual marketing and real sales. I think this is a topic we've all been dealing with, regardless of the business we're in. The COVID pandemic has fundamentally changed the way all of our companies go to market, the types of products they might be developing, how they build their sales organizations. It's upended in so many ways the way we're used to doing business. We have a fantastic panel joining us this morning who are going to share their experiences and their perspectives on this topic. But I also invite you as the attendees, you're in the same boat as all of us, so please share your perspectives, ask your questions, just throw them in the chat and we'll end up catching them. And as they come up, I'll try to bring them into the discussion. And then after this is done, if you have other questions, if there's ideas you have, things you'd like to see discussed as a follow-on, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to any other of the Medical Alley Association staff. So to get started, I'm going to do quick intros of our speakers, and then we'll go into the questions. And just because of the order on my screen, John, why don't we start with you? If you'd introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Kindeva.
Certainly. Hello, everyone. I'm John Vasilakis. I'm the Global Head of Business Development for our Microneedles program at Kindeva. So Kindeva is sort of a new company. We actually are a spin-off, or we are a divested company from 3M. We used to be called 3M Drug Delivery Systems Division. And earlier this year, we formally became Kindeva Drug Delivery. We essentially are, in a lot of ways, the same company that we were before, except we are, I'll say, clearly much more focused, I think, on delivering our products to our customers in a manner that's very independent now of a much larger organization that was in front of us. And again, you know, Kindeva is a company that produces products that delivers drugs, designed to deliver drugs to the lungs or through the skin or into the skin. So we're essentially, we are a CDMO, and we work with a lot of major, medium, and smaller biopharmaceutical companies. Oh, and just one last thing about me, even though I'm head of business development, my long history has been predominantly in the laboratory. I'm a PhD immunologist, and I'm probably the most unusual person that's on this panel here for this type of discussion. But I'll try to stick to sales rather than to any technical information.
Thank you, John. And fun fact on Kindeva, the history of the drug delivery business is really important to Medical Alley. The guy who started way back in the day, one of the first drug delivery companies in Minnesota, Lectech, who was a 3M executive, was also the founder of Medical Alley Association. Yeah. Libby, if you would.
Hi, I'm Libby, and I'm with Gravy. We're a health benefits provider that's been around since 2013. At Gravy, we improve the way employers purchase and access healthcare, and we provide coverage they can actually use. So we offer multiple health benefit solutions, including several private label health plans. one that we just launched during COVID-19, and a tax-free individual option as well. In addition to health benefits, our technology is really what sets us apart. Employees are able to shop for and enroll in coverage through our intuitive shopping portal. And we also offer year-round benefit support through licensed advisors who make up our Gravy Care team. We also have an employer portal where employers can log in and manage their benefits in real time.
Wonderful, thank you. And fun fact with Gravy, the team that's involved there has made major contributions to just health insurance in general, and responsible for probably about a dozen different highly successful companies in the Medical Alley region. And then Brandon, if you would.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Schnitker. I'm the Director of Marketing for our ENT business at Stryker. Stryker is a global med device company headquartered in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We run a very decentralized model. So our headquarters for the ENT business is here in Plymouth, Minnesota, and has been since 2018 with the acquisition of Intellis Medical, which was founded here. And our core customer, we're in med device. Our core customer is the ENT physician, all the way from academic fellowship trained rhinologists down to general practice ENTs that we see every day for common issues in sinus disease, rhinitis, eustachian tube dysfunction, and nasal airway challenges for patients. So the pandemic's been interesting for us, as you can imagine, with the slowdown in elective surgery, and we've really had to reimagine how we engage with our customers, both through marketing and sales channels. So really excited for the topic, and thank you all for joining today.
Thank you. And fun fact with Stryker, the acquisition of Intellis that got them here, Intellis was one of the most successful IPOs in Minnesota history. And it's fun to see the business continue to grow. So we've got a couple of themes that we're going to dive into today. And I've kind of organized our thoughts around this idea of what are we doing today, right? We've got to deal with business right now. What are we thinking about we're going to do tomorrow, whenever that is? How have our customers changed as a result of the pandemic? And then finally, what are we doing on the people side of the business? How are we changing our development strategies, our recruiting strategies as a result of all of this? And again, I'll remind our attendees, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll try to grab those as we go through. So the first question I want to start with is probably the most direct one, which is, historically in our businesses, in person was a big deal, whether it was for sales, whether it was trade events, other activities. A lot of what we did to promote and sell our products was about face-to-face, hand-to-hand interactions. And clearly, we can't do that right now, or we can't do very much of it. And we're probably going to be in that situation for a while longer. So I was thinking, maybe, John, I'll start with you, but I'm curious, how are you adapting? How are you changing, and has it turned out better or worse than you thought it would?
Okay. So first of all, just to make sure that everybody understands that really when we're talking about sales, what we're talking about from my perspective here, okay? So as part of business development, the idea is to engage a customer, okay, to get them interested in our technology, to essentially convince them to work with us in developing a drug device product. So they bring the drug, we bring the device, and at the end, a separate product is produced. So we start with engagement. And then ultimately, when we talk about sales, what sales specifically here is, it's an agreement that we will work together to develop a product, okay? So the way we've done that in the past, the way everybody, I think, has pretty much done this in the past is we engage, most of the time it's face-to-face, and conferences and trade shows are huge. Okay, so now what you do is you take out the face-to-face, and now you have conferences, but they are different, okay? Now we had LinkedIn, but what has happened is through mediums like LinkedIn, through conferences, I'll say also through using various marketing tools such as PharmaCircle as an example. Okay, what we've done is we've gotten a lot better at using LinkedIn. There's been an effort, so for instance, we'll say, we've been trained now by a professional, quote, LinkedIn individual to actually, how do you do this? And I'll say in the past, there may have been some training, but it was very, very brief, very superficial, if you will, right? And then, in addition, we've actually employed or contracted out an individual to help us with engaging and targeting and actually to put strategy together in terms of how to identify, I'll say, potential business targets. And so I think the situation, if you just step back, the view from 20,000 feet, we've had to work a lot harder in the absence of face-to-face. I mean, I think that's just basic for everybody. We just have to work harder at engaging the customer and really moving things forward. And then we've had to all use the digital technology to engage them. But I think that is really sort of a high-level perspective on your question.
Interesting. So a follow-up question on that, you said harder. Is it harder because it's new, or do you think it's harder because it's harder?
It's in part because it's new, and it's not just new, say for me, it's also new for the customer as well, right? And then there's some the things that you don't see in the background, right? So just take a new employee, right? And you think about how does that person get up to speed? They're on the steep end of the learning curve, right? Well, it really helps to be in an office situation where you can walk right down the hall and you can engage someone that has that level of expertise to help you figure out what you need to do to go forward. So, it doesn't just pertain to the interactions that we have with the customers. It actually goes way deeper. It goes into how well do we perform at doing our job, at how well do we do with I'll just say doing our job. Those interactions that we have within face-to-face, it's not just really with the customer, but it's also with our own colleagues that I think is really critical.
Interesting. And Libby, I want to ask you the same question because you all are in the kind of the middle of open enrollment season right now. So I have to think this is really real for what you're doing. What's the environment been like making that shift?
To be honest, a lot of our customers are all over the country. So our sales team was pretty used to, doing Zoom meetings and things like that from the beginning. But we've certainly had to, I think we miss those in-person meetings and in-person connections. And of course, I think that it's easier and probably more impactful to meet with a person in real life. But we've adapted there. We've shifted, we used to do a lot of in-person events for employers and brokers across the country. And then also our co-founders would travel around and speak at events. And so that's certainly changed. We've invested a lot more in digital to promote our webinars and things like that our salespeople put on. And then we've also tried some new things. So that's to promote webinars and other sales tactics through LinkedIn, just things we wouldn't have tried, I guess, otherwise. So that's been a positive outcome. We've tried some video and then a lot of personal outreach via LinkedIn, which has been successful for us.
Oh, very interesting. And Brandon, I do want this question from everyone. So Brandon, what's it been like in your world? Is when I think of device, right, that in-person, being in the OR even is such a critical part of it. What's it meant for you guys?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting time for us. Certainly in the beginning part of the pandemic, as we were trying to learn and understand just the pure health risk, both to our employees and to our healthcare providers, our physicians. Certainly things slowed down to a pretty grinding halt there in the very beginning. But what you recognize is when you're providing care and you're in the operating room, you're there for a reason as a sales rep to support the physician, to support the staff for the safe and efficacious use of your technology. And so, our presence in the operating room is critical for many of the cases that we support today. So it's been, Stryker as a corporation is extremely diverse. We have orthopedic implant reps, in the ENT business. We're all very present in the operating room. Some of our other businesses are more capital intensive, and so their interaction with customers have evolved. We're leveraging digital where we can. What we've really focused on is making sure our employees are as safe as can be while still supporting customers and delivering care for their patients. So where we can leverage digital and gain scale, reduce travel, what can be done virtually, we do virtually. And where we have to be in person, either for physician training and education on our tools or for surgical support, we're right in the trenches with our physicians and going and navigating through the same PPE requirements and challenges that I think early in the supply challenges we had in the market, we were very much aligned there in the trenches. So we've been balancing to the best of our ability, knowing that our priorities have to be to keep our physicians safe, keep their patients safe, keep our employees safe. And so we've really worked to evolve a number of the areas of marketing that we do to leverage the digital platforms where we can. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's certainly a fluid situation and continues to evolve over the course of our understanding of what the inherent risk is of the disease. And that's been a big focus for us as well.
And related to that, we had a question from the audience about digital technologies and kind of, everyone's mentioned the usage of some sort of digital tech. And the question was, how is that different now compared to what you might have been doing, let's say in January or February of this year? And maybe Brandon, I'd start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think, for us, where we have to be with customers, there are certain things that we do that you can't replace in-person meetings. That's hands-on training. Physicians need the tactical training to understand how to use our technology. And so that's a big part of what we do. But, when you're doing general education awareness, webinars, things like trade shows, there's an opportunity to actually gain scale in the number of physicians you can reach. Our attendance levels in many of our webinars have gone exponentially higher because of the reach you can gain by leveraging digital tools. And so I would say, what's different is we're prioritizing our travel to mission critical customer facing travel and one-to-one interaction. And where it makes sense to mitigate risk, that's where we're really leveraging those tools. But like I said, there's a bright side to it, and we're able to expand reach in the folks that we can connect with.
Yeah. And Libby, you had said, you all were already doing a lot of these things. So how has it changed for you where maybe Gravy was a bit more mature in digital marketing?
I think we've just, ramped it up quite a bit. So taking that in-person event budget and investing in digital marketing to promote webinars, to, piggyback off what Brandon said, you can get a lot more people on a webinar, also across the country, right? You're not restricted to one location. So that's been really great. And then also, I think people are really looking to educate themselves a little bit more. So I've found that our webinar attendance has actually gone up quite a bit.
Yeah. And, it's funny, it's interesting. We've seen the same thing where even like on this webinar, we've got 120 people logged into it right now. When we would do in-person events, 120 person in-person event for us would have been on the upper end of size. And now it's relatively normal. John, that question to you, but in a slightly different way, because you had mentioned LinkedIn, and in the chat, there was a question about like, what does that look like for you guys today compared to what you were doing before? Like, how has that practically changed?
Sure. So basically, Brandon and Libby, I think, said a couple things that are perfect here. So the first is what this social media has done for us. It has allowed us to certainly expand our reach. Okay, so that's a positive part. And I think what's really important in regard to your question, and I think what Libby had said, we are just better at using social media now than we have before. All right. It's just, and part of it is we've had to work at it. It's not that this didn't exist, but we just pay much more attention to it. We've become much better at using LinkedIn. We've decided to also engage our customers, in terms of more actively pursuing, for instance, publications than we had in the past. It's not that it didn't exist, it existed. I think what has happened is if you take away the face-to-face part, all right, the rest, the social media, the LinkedIn, all of that existed. But now what has happened in the absence of the face-to-face, we simply have to be much better at using these other technologies, of being virtual, if you will. And I think the only way that I can really say it is, and maybe the only advice that I could give on this is just get as good at it as you possibly can, because that's really what's available to us today.
So, all right, you've all mentioned this, like not being able to do the in-person, the travel. I'm curious, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but do you think will travel come back? Like if once we get through all of this, will you shift resources back, or do you think the balance is now fully in favor of a more digital first? And maybe I'll start with Brandon on that one.
Yeah, Frank, I think for us, it probably depends on industry, and what the function is going to be. Certainly many of our folks that are here in the Twin Cities are just itching to get on a plane and get in front of customers. And it's kind of the thing that's a lifeblood for our organization and culture. And certainly our field sales team is out with customers every day. So, what we've talked about is there will be an evolution of being more efficient with our time and energy and our money, right? I mean, sometimes we would travel for the sake of a 1-hour meeting to go be in Kalamazoo, which just we recognize we can be extremely productive leveraging these tools. But there's also, right, the element of the more virtual you are, the less personal engagement you have from an organizational culture perspective, which I think could be even more detrimental than some of the things we've been facing for the last 9 months. So, I look at it as an opportunity for us to say, when we're going to be on a plane, we're traveling, we're prioritizing in our world either customer interaction or employee engagement and development. Those are the two big things that we're going to spend our resources on, because those are critical to our future growth. Where we need to get onto a quick meeting, for an hour without anything else to do, spending the time to travel is really not productive and a great use of resources. So I think we'll be much more efficient, but we're certainly still going to be active with customers.
Yeah, Libby, what about you all?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. I think that we'll probably be more efficient in the future, like, really look into if we do need to travel for that meeting. But, I think there's a certain amount of networking and, social interaction you get from some of these like industry events that you're just never going to get via Zoom. So I'm sure we'll go back to some travel.
Yeah, the serendipitous and social aspect of it is hard to replicate. Yeah. And then John, what about you guys? Because like as you outlined, your development is much more like creating a new product, co-development with the customers, not just bringing the existing thing to market. So what does that look like for you all?
Sure. Well, okay, so there's no question that not being able to travel has affected us in some negative ways. And so when travel does come back, yes, we're definitely we'll definitely travel. That's not a question. I think what'll happen is, like everyone, we will still be in the virtual world. Okay, we'll still use virtual technology to interact with our customers. Okay, that's not going to change at all. I think probably that this is definitely going to be industry dependent. And I'll give you just an example. I think so. Part of us coming to an agreement, for instance, with a company, maybe, let's say we want to do a clinical supply agreement as an example, okay? So a customer might say to us, okay, listen, everything sounds really good. We need to do an audit of your facility. Perfectly reasonable question, right? Well, they can't travel, so how are we going to do this? So now we're trying to figure out digital ways in order to do the audit. And so as long as both parties are interested in this, we can do this. If we can travel, no big deal. They just come to the site and see it, right? And so you can certainly see where that's going to be, where there's a perfect example of where we need to engage our customers. They need to travel to us, as an example. Now, I will also say in terms of conferences, I've been to 2 conferences so far this year, obviously virtual. And I think the level of engagement is good in terms of the number of people that you reach, but there are certain things that I think are missing. And there's just something about the face-to-face which is critical, and just being there and seeing it in person, I think, still matters. So I think though we'll still do that. And obviously trade shows, it's kind of hard to show somebody what your product looks like and feels like if they can't touch it. So then you have to really focus on video, for instance, and that can be effective in part, but it's only partially effective. So yes, we're looking forward for multiple reasons for COVID-19 to go away, but definitely I think to really business will work better when we can meet each other face to face.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And as a Minnesotan, I will say I'm looking forward to the travel coming back because MSP Airport is one of our best economic assets. Seeing that be viable, like I'm really pulling for. Although if any of you or if any of the attendees are Sky Miles program users, it looks like we're going to get just devalued out of all of the miles that are just kind of sitting on the accounts right now.
Great.
It'll be a weird, weird travel time next year. There was a question in the chat, kind of gets at this and goes to one of the other topics we wanted to talk about around customer engagement. So call it a two-part question, which is, how are we reimagining customer engagement? So not necessarily like new customer development, but maintaining and growing relationships with our existing customers when we don't have that breaking bread, sitting down, connecting at conferences, passing in the halls. And so kind of then related to that, do we need to up the production value in virtual events or virtual engagements? Are there solutions we need that haven't been found? So two-parter, what are you doing to engage customers today? And then where do you see some opportunity to make improvements in that process or in the technology? And Libby, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So we have been holding more webinars for current employer clients. We haven't done that as much in the past. So we've been doing that more, just giving them an opportunity to, ask us questions and hear from our leadership about our products and services. We have a pretty comprehensive email marketing campaign to current both employer customers and members, their employees, just kind of like engaging with them on a regular basis about, hey, did you use your primary care visit this year, or did you know you can buy dental through the Gravy platform? So just emails like that, and just trying to keep them engaged and keep Gravy top of mind. We're hoping for, after all of this, getting more involved. So we do have our online shopping portal and enrollment platform, but we're hoping to maybe go do some more in-person kind of kickoff meetings and events. So really get people excited when they sign on with Gravy. For the time being, we'll just continue to do that through webinars, but something we're excited to go back to after the pandemic.
And are there things that you're not seeing other than the social connectivity part, where, say, those of us that are producing events or developing these technologies, is there a hole you would love to see filled or gap filled? Maybe there isn't today.
Yeah, to be honest, our members were contacting us via, email and phone all of the time to get their questions answered. Our employer customers have a dedicated account manager and can regularly access their portal. So there isn't anything that I've seen that's missing or that we haven't been able to fill, a void we haven't been able to fill.
And Brandon, how's that played out for you guys as far as keeping engaged with the existing customer base?
Yeah, I think, as we kind of went into the early part of the pandemic, the thought process here shouldn't be any different than it is any other time when you're doing business planning and thinking of marketing 101, is you've got to understand your customers and you got to understand who they are, what they need, and you just recognize the fact that their needs change. And so our approach early on in the pandemic, especially in the space we're in, was to kind of turn off the marketing and promotion of what we do and really sit down and just listen and understand what are the realities that our customers are going through, because their realities were completely different in the middle of March than they were in the middle of February. So we spent a lot of time and went into hyperdrive, and I have to compliment our team. We hosted over 50 or so virtual kind of roundtables with different physicians in the physician community. Some were just us hosting and saying, hey, 20 folks want to log in and talk to each other to just share information. Because if you remember back at the time, March and April, we were all trying to learn and understand what was happening in New York versus Florida versus Minnesota versus California. And so a lot of it was sharing information and getting a community of physicians together to be able to really even digest and understand what their needs were. So we just spent a lot of time listening, frankly, and that more than anything. And we were very intentional about not promoting any of the technologies we had, even in the early stages of technologies that could potentially benefit the physician community in navigating out of the pandemic or navigating back to treating patients. We felt like it was appropriate early on to just make sure that we were listening. So I think from a customer engagement perspective, I would encourage anyone on the webinar just to think about what is the new reality for your customers and what is it that they need today. And I think the brand equity you build by listening rather than promoting, especially at the right time, is far more valuable. On the question of can you up the production value in virtual meetings, I think that's an interesting question as a marketer, and we're planning for our national sales meeting right now. That's a big topic of discussion. Our mid-year meeting was everything we could do to make it engaging, and it was probably half traditional what it would look like if we were in person, half us trying to reimagine it. And I think the new version here in January will be us fully trying to reimagine it, more along the lines of what you saw maybe in both of the political conventions, is new ways to deliver content and deliver engaging interaction. But I would say, and interestingly, none of the three panelists have a virtual background, and I thought about it. But one of the cool things that's happened, and as we're having conversations with physicians, we're seeing into their homes. And one of the most world-renowned rhinologists we work with has his office set up on a laptop on a table in his gym in his house. And it creates some humanity to this whole situation that I actually think is valuable as we're trying to understand our customers in a different way. Now, certainly I love a great, well-produced virtual meeting, but when it comes to one-on-one interaction, I think the humanity of it's actually been a blessing of the pandemic.
I'm with you on that. I have enjoyed meeting the cats and dogs and kids of a lot of different people the last couple of months. That's been a lot of fun. And you hit on a key item that I want to shift to in a second, which is how our customers have changed in all of this. But I wanted to highlight something you said and ask John about this as well. You talked about the roundtables and bringing your customers together. I've heard that from other companies, and we've done the same thing. And I would say to everyone on this event, the customer roundtables are unbelievably powerful. And I don't know why we weren't doing these in a digital format before. So we've been able to get, some of our members together with executives from other communities. So our counterparts in California or in Boston or New York, to exactly as Brandon said, talk about what they're seeing in their world. We sit back and listen. We learn a ton, but then our members are finding new insights, new relationships as a result. It was a thing we always could have done, but we didn't really think to do it until kind of forced into this new constraint and new environment. Jenna, I'm curious,
Yeah.
Are there things like that you guys have looked at or are doing that maybe you wouldn't have thought of doing, 7 months ago?
Sure. Well, so it just kind of, I can remember in the past we had a situation where we were bringing together a number of customers into the Twin Cities, and it was in the wintertime. And a number of these people were in various types of climates. And we argued for a long time as to whether we should bring them into the Twin Cities in the wintertime and irritate them because of the weather, or should we just pick a nice warm location and then have everybody meet there, and then we'll pay for the travel and all that. Well, the amount of time and discussion that it took to do that, and then to get everybody's schedules all in line, I mean, it was a complete things work out, but the amount of time and effort that it spent, and you look, we did have virtual this technology available to us. We just didn't think that it was really a good way to go at the time. And I think one thing that we've learned is that there are some really good benefits from this. I do think, just to kind of make sure that we get finish your original question on the engagement and how we're reimagining things. I think it is really important that COVID-19, what it did, it doesn't just affect the way we work right here, right? I mean, in our particular business, it affects what customers actually work on, what our customers work on. We had a number of companies, for instance, interested in, they still are interested in, for instance, the cancer vaccine space, and they want to work with us on that. And we're in the middle of discussions, and the next thing you know, the COVID situation arises. And because of, well, the need to produce a product there, and because of a significant amount of money that came from various governments around the world, and various agencies, they, of course, transitioned their efforts into those areas. And so you think about how that affects your business. And really, as Brandon said, what you have to do is stop and listen and really think, okay, our job is ultimately, we're trying to solve our business partner's problems. We're trying to help them solve that problem. And so if we don't understand the problem, then clearly we're not going to be able to help them. And so I think that was really something that had to happen. And we had to really reimagine, okay, how we were going to go forward. And part of it really was just to stop, to listen, to put a strategy together on how we want to go forward, and then to think about timing. When will we re-engage these partners, okay, on those original issues that they brought up, on those original problems that we were going to work on together? And so I just think reimagining is understanding the current situation you're in, and then really thinking, oh, I thought I understood what the customer really wanted from us. Well, things have changed.
Yeah, one last question kind of in that theme, and then I want to switch to the customer side because we're starting to talk about it. And I think, Brandon, this one's more specifically for you, but the training side of this, right? So we've talked about sales and marketing, but particularly in device, although I know it's true in other areas, there's a big component of training the clinicians or the nurses or whoever on the use of the products. Are you doing that remotely? What does that look like? I mean, how's that experience been?
Yes, we've been engaging in a little bit of both. Whether it's training or even soliciting feedback on prototypes for new product development. A lot of those things we've tried to engage in virtually, even sending prototypes to physicians and doing Zoom calls and trying to work through that. But the value, that's great as a bridge, but really you need to be in person. So we've just started getting back into live interactions for our traditional, call it, physician education events. And it's been interesting. Your reps are in the field with physicians, and they're following local protocols for individual facilities and engaging, and you can do some hands-on education there. But as it relates to a structured medical education event that we would do, what used to be a 3-hour event, if you were bringing through 20 physicians and you could put all 20 into 8 different stations and everyone could be in one room. Now it's the same size room with 2 stations, 25 feet apart, and you're working through the logistics just in a completely different way. But like you said, the ability to help train and educate physicians is critical to their ability to deliver care for patients. So, we have to keep that in mind. And so there are certain things we just have to do. And so we've had to recreate and be flexible in logistics. And I think everyone understands that. And I think, our customers, and even all the way down through our marketing organization that plans the medical education events, are all just reimagining ways to provide value given the new restrictions.
Indeed. I want to shift now to this topic that you all have started to touch on, which is how our customers' worlds have changed and what's that meant. So I'm curious from each of you, and John, we'll start with you at the top and then go down. How has your customers' world changed, and how has that changed, how you think about your value that you provide?
Yeah, well, okay. So as as customers, most of our customers were interested in areas, I'll speak specifically to the microneedle program, okay, that I'm working on. So most of our customers were working in areas that were outside of infectious disease. Many of those customers, I'll say maybe half of those customers, directly changed their focus into COVID-19 because of 40, I'll say 40%, decided to move into COVID-19. So now all of a sudden that removed significant, effort within that area, or within the area that we originally started to work on. And, clearly their investment dollars also change, right? Okay. And so that of course is going to have a downstream effect on us and how we go forward. So I think that's a negative side to it, right? The positive side is there is actually a silver lining in that a number of we had new customers that came to us that we did not anticipate, that were actually interested in discussing COVID-19 therapeutics with us. All right. So there was this, on the one hand, we lost some opportunities, but on the other hand, we gained some opportunities. And that was just something that we couldn't foresee that was going to happen. So, so it's been kind of a little of a negative, but also a positive, I guess you could say.
Mixed bag. Interesting. And Libby, what about in your world where, right, I think about employees now working from home, there were layoffs, there were hiring. I mean, in the employee benefits world, I have to imagine this was a significant change.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, our customers, our employers across various industries and various sizes of businesses and organizations. So their needs changed in a variety of ways, but I would say kind of across the board, we saw fear of the unknown. So like uncertainty, like what's going to happen with healthcare costs and health benefit costs. Those have already been rising year after year. What's that going to look like in 2021? What about regulation changes? Can their employees get the care they need when they need it, whether it's COVID related or something else? So those were all concerns that our customers, of course, had, and then their employees as well, wondering if they can get care and be able to afford their benefits. So we were launching this new product during COVID-19. Obviously, we didn't know that would happen at the time, but it's a health plan that essentially provides 100% coverage for common healthcare services. So something good, I guess, that we saw was that our customers, suddenly health was very top of mind. So like I had said, making sure their employees can get the care they need. I think they always cared, but they cared more now than ever. Did they have access to like wellness programs that might help them stay healthy? Did they have access to the prescriptions they needed? Things like that. So I think that these have been, as far as, having access to healthcare, having affordable benefits, all those sorts of things have been needs that our customers have had all along. I just think that this shed, a new light on it and really prioritized it. So that was a good thing.
And then Brandon, what about in your world? You've talked a little bit about this.
Yeah, I think for our specific physician set, the ENT physicians, early on, it was very, very much trying to understand the inherent risk of treating patients with COVID-19 and what risk that posed to the physician and the physician staff. And that continues to be, obviously top of mind, many protocols, and we understand a lot more about how to protect physicians and the staff during procedures. And so a lot of that, the healthcare community and the surgical community has come together to really put a lot of information, understanding around that that we didn't necessarily have early on. So I think we continue to stay focused on that. Customers are looking, I think, more broadly, and we've hosted a number of webinars and seminars with, thinking a little bit more broadly, hospital supply chain, and what does this mean to how they change their business, and not just in the devices they buy, but also their the supply chain of all the vendors that they work with. How secure is the supply chain to natural disasters, whether they be hurricanes or pandemics. So I think the value proposition of organizations as they interface with hospitals and health systems, even beyond just the physician level, are going to continue to evolve. And thinking about the value that we provide, or any supplier provides to a health system, has to be robust and it has to be reliable in a way that I think probably wasn't as highlighted in the past. It was always something we wanted to hang our hat on as a larger med tech company, but I think in the future that security does bring something unique for more of the hospital health system type customer base.
Yeah, I've had more conversations on supply chain in the last 3 months than probably in the last 3 years as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a question from the audience that I wanted to ask to all of you, which is about building customer advisory boards and experiences with that. Can anyone comment on their experience with that, bringing customers together in a more formal way to give feedback, and how has that worked, or maybe some best practice ideas?
Yeah, Frank, I can start there. As I alluded to it a little bit before, and we already had a customer advisory board that we worked with regularly, and I would encourage that. I think it's just important to understand the larger trends happening in the market, and I would do it at different levels, right? And as we discussed, there are some customers that think about the segment in aggregate. So if the folks that lead for us physician societies are thinking about the health of the entire ENT physician community in the practice of healthcare. But there's also, customers that aren't involved in that, and they're much more tied to the day-to-day delivery of care for patients. And so I think when you're building customer advisory boards, I think it makes a ton of sense. And just as common practice outside the pandemic, I would do it based on your normal principles of segmentation. What type of customer group are you trying to reach here? But as it pertained to the pandemic, that became critical for us. And I think the reason we were able to activate quickly is because we had that infrastructure established. But what we did, as I said, we didn't stick just to that group. We opened it up, kind of broad, open source type information sharing, just to make sure that we could facilitate an environment where we were learning, our customers were learning, and we kind of went through that process together. So I think it's a great practice, both in times of crisis, but in a steady state, it helps you stay close to your customers.
I think that's a really good point of the mutual benefit of having them, where it's not only do you gain insights, but your customers gain insights from each other as a result.
Yep.
Yeah. Libby or John, any thoughts on that?
We've done a lot of one-on-one outreach, I would say, and set up a lot of individual meetings with our employer customers. Just because a lot of their issues and struggles during COVID-19 might be more private, but it was a really good opportunity to learn about things that actually had nothing to do with COVID and further develop our products and services. So not as much customer advisory boards, but more contact one-on-one with our customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think similarly for us at Kindeva, we've I would say it's much more one-on-one with the customer. Okay, so and our business is different. So when we think about advisory boards, we think about something like either a clinical advisory board or a key opinion leader advisory board, okay, rather than a customer advisory board. So you can imagine that, say major pharmaceutical company A and major pharmaceutical company B they may not want to get in the room or on the screen together and talk about technologies. In fact, there could be some very good reasons not to ever have them in the room together and have a discussion with us. All right, and so we would do it in a very different way because our business model is very different. But what I will say though is these advisory boards are very important, and so for us, we've had a lot of discussion and we've got a lot of, I'll say, plans and strategy as we are moving forward to really I'll say to have more of these key opinion leader advisory boards to help us not really with our current customer base, but really with identifying new customer bases.
Very good. Um, in our last 10 minutes, I want to turn to probably the most important topic and what could be, I think, its own event in its own right, which is, the people and people development side of this, that I suspect each of your organizations, right, you're having to manage or collaborate with team members at a distance, maybe bringing on new people into the organization. And whereas I think often in the sales world, we've been used to that, right? Sales teams are often field and remote, whereas marketing teams usually have been, a little less decentralized, although not entirely. So I'm curious from each of you, how has the experience been of like managing or collaborating with your teams during this? And then the development of people or helping your teams grow in this sort of environment. And maybe Libby, start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm used to just turning around and being able to talk to my coworkers on a regular basis. So this has certainly been a change. But lots of one-on-one meetings with my employees, an hour maybe. I mean, I just really want to, stay in touch with them and eh, even let them vent about stuff that might not be work related, just because I think we all need like that connection and that support during this time. So more on a personal note, but professional development as well. Still setting goals, still checking into making sure we're meeting those goals. We actually brought on a new team member during this time that had more experience, with the digital stuff. We actually, right when we went into COVID, had signed a contract with Marketing Cloud. So that was kind of lucky because Marketing Cloud obviously is an email platform. So this person had a lot of experience with that. So it's been strange, I guess I would say, onboarding new employees, but I would say there's, a certain type of relationship you're able to build that way, that you might just get to know each other a lot faster, just because you kind of have to. It's a strange environment, but I would say just lots of one-on-ones, checking in, being sensitive to people's, changing needs and feelings during this time.
Indeed, yeah. And then Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the ways think about leading through crisis is a lot of great communication, transparency, trying to make sure that you're staying out in front of your teams, and we did that a lot early on. Um, and so I think you've got to set a precedent in the beginning that you're going to communicate, even if you don't know the answers. You're going to continue to do everything you can to share what you have when you have it.
Mhm.
And what we found over time, I think Libby, that one of the words you used was flexibility. The reality is there also becomes a moment where it's like, okay, I can't have one more 30-minute virtual meeting. Feel free to turn off the video every once in a while. Take walking one-on-ones. I think you've got to find some balance as well, in providing your teams the flexibility to handle this kind of unprecedented pressure and stress in the way that makes sense for them. Whether that's having to homeschool kids while both parents are working, or even if one parent's working, the stampede of footsteps I hear above me every day when the 3-year-old comes home from school, right? We're all trying to balance a whole lot of new stresses. And I think the best we can do to invest in our people the same way we invest in our customers, and understanding what they need at the time, is critical. I think, from a development perspective, you still have to put people in a position, with responsibility and accountability for delivering results, and staying to those things, setting goals, as Libby said. None of that changes, but how you engage with people, and how you help them navigate their individual realities, I think is important. It's an ongoing challenge, and I think here in the Twin Cities, as we approach winter, the ability to even do a socially distant dinner outside becomes a whole new challenge. So
Yeah, here to that. It's going to be quite a bit different as the snow hits the ground. And I will echo what you said about the like turning video off or doing a walking meeting. I have rediscovered the phone call this year. Yeah. John, what about you guys? What's that been like?
So I think on the positive end, we, I think we've become a lot closer Okay, and I think we work better together, to be quite honest about it. Now, and I want to. It's a little difficult question for me, in part because you remember now we are a new company and we've separated from 3M, and so some of that actually might be because of the separation from 3M, but also I think a lot of it has to do with we understand that we can't see each other and that we have to actually, actively engage with each other. I think another part in just, we have a number of people in the UK. Okay, so we have St. Paul, a lot of people in St. Paul, a lot of people in the UK. And I think our interactions, especially with the people in the UK, are a lot better. And not that they were poor before, but I think there's a much more active and deliberate effort to interact and to solve problems with them that otherwise we just didn't. It wasn't front and center beforehand. I think just the training piece though is something that I think is really important, and I think we have to work harder at doing that without being face to face. I mean, I had mentioned it earlier. I think there's an advantage to just being able to stick your head, walk outside your office and say, walk right down the hall and say, quick question, and ask that question. And now it's much more difficult, And then in terms of, and just by the way, in terms of like all constantly being in front of the monitor, I can tell you one of the things that I've learned about myself, which I think is a good thing, is we'll often have meetings and I'll just turn the video off and put the headset on and I just walk. I just pace and walk and talk to people doing that. And quite honestly, that works for me. So, it's kind of odd just working within, within the company. All right. We've found ways, I think, to actually work better with each other in a lot of different ways. Our engagement has become better.
And I think that's a really good place to wrap it up. I've seen the same thing in our work, and I've heard that from other organizations that because we all have to be more communicative, right? You really do have to work at it. It's had a positive effect of we're engaged more, we're talking more, we're sharing more because we know we need to. And that probably is a great thing to continue whatever the new normal or post-pandemic or whatever the world is. So I think on that positive note, this is a good place to wrap it up. Fantastic discussion, great questions from the audience. Thank you all for being so engaged. And John, Libby, Brandon, thank you for being members. Thank you for sharing your time and insights today. And I'll say have a great day to everyone.